Okay, the recording started. So, the first question is, as a professor at Anderson, I'm sure you've seen a lot of students creating businesses. So, are there any common traits you've seen for success or failure?
Wow. Well, look, I suppose my answer to that would be because what makes a successful business sometimes is a number of ingredients. I mean, so you have to sort of step back, and most businesses and business concepts are sort of transitioning between a business idea and actual execution is a business plan. So that's, I mean, first and foremost, is you have to put together I'm not sure it has to be institutional quality, but certainly a well thought out business plan in which you lay out everything from, okay, who is this? What is your idea? What's the company? Um, what is the addressable market? What pain or problem are you solving for customers, potential clients? And you have to articulate that in a quick 1 minute at most answer.
Hmm.
What pain are you solving that exists for customers? All right. Who are the competitors? It's very unusual that there's just some nascent market without other entrenched or experienced players. So, what have they missed? Who are they? How are you going to either avoid them or beat them at this game? What are your resources, both human capital and investment capital that you need, that you have, and that you need to effectuate your business plan? I mean, so it's really thinking through all of those issues. What's your break-even point? What do you need to sell? If it's depends what it is, whether it's licenses for a software product, it's subscribers to an app. Unit sales, whatever it is, to break even. Just starting there, and then you can sort of think more broadly from that. So look, ideas are easy. Ideas are people have good ideas all the time. Execution is hard,
Hmm.
and so it's you know really thinking through the your business plan very thoroughly to begin with, and even things like beachhead markets. Where are you going to start? Look, as a new company, as a startup, you can usually you have limited resources. You have to pick your battles thoughtfully. Where do you have the best chance of succeeding? You call it your beachhead market. How do you identify those potential customers and then win them?
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And as a follow up question, in our Harvard class, we learned that a lot of these venture capitalists look for companies that have multiple partners. So, do you think that when starting your business, it's necessary to have a partner or a co founder?
No, no, but look, as I said, there are very few organizations that are successful that don't have a deep roster of talent. I don't care if you're the Lakers, the Dodgers, or you're, um, founding some startup. You need to have, a talent. You think about the disciplines in any business, whether it's sales and marketing, business development and strategy, operations, accounting and finance, human resources and organizational behavior, HR department. I mean, these are all disciplines within both business school education and with a business. And so you need to have folks that are able to do that. Now, when you're starting, you tend not to have individuals in all people overlapping roles. Basically, the founder may be doing HR and sales and
Yeah.
marketing and everything else, wearing 38 hats. But you have to have a plan, if nothing else, because obviously the risk is greater if everything is tied up in one individual. So
Right.
a plan for identifying talent, attracting talent, retaining talent, and knowing what those needs are is fundamental. Again, humans are going to be executing your grandiose, brilliant idea anyways.
Hmm.
What do you think is the greatest challenge when starting a business or a startup?
Well, usually I said it's I think two or three things. One is usually money. It takes a lot of money to start a business.
Hmm.
So what kind of resources have you got? There are places you go, angel investors. As you sort of think about capital coming into any business venture, some people have money, whether it's family money or their own assets, since that's one thing. But usually you get angel investors, really seed capital from friends, family, wherever the hell you can get it before you get venture capital. And then once you're there, then you can go seek venture funding and all that. So that's one thing. It's just that. The second thing is, like I said, competition. Look, people think that their idea is brilliant, that no one else has had that idea or thought. It's very uncommon. And look, even some of you think about very successful businesses. We talk about, you've probably heard the expression of first mover advantage. There are many folks who say that's a bunch of bullshit. It's actually a second mover advantage, because the first mover, maybe it's BlackBerry. I don't know if you guys remember BlackBerry.
Yeah, I did.
You were kids, okay? BlackBerry had dominated the cell phone market before iPhone. Dominated. I had a BlackBerry. Everyone I know had a BlackBerry. And then Apple comes in. They're not the first mover. They were the second mover and just killed BlackBerry. Just put them out of business because they had a better product. They had more of a it did all the things that BlackBerry did, but of course had that useful interface and and everything else. The graphical user interface just took over the market. So, those are the challenges. You have to really think about your competition, both who's there, who's coming, and people don't give mind to that. They just think they're, the cat's meow. And the fact is, there's a lot of really, really smart people doing a lot of amazing things, and you're rarely the one with the only idea. So it's all about execution. Timing helps luck. I mean, again, human capital and enough money.
Yeah, I guess BlackBerry could be seen as like a test run for that market, and then Apple just took advantage.
Right. There's some argument to that. Look, I mean, before you guys were even born, we had the Sony Walkman, and then iPod. Before even the cell phone, before Apple had iPhones, they had the iPod, and that changed everything. I mean, so you're absolutely right. It's often that there's already entrenched players. You have a better mousetrap, and you look at what's out there and you take advantage of their shortcomings, and maybe they're not paying attention. One thing I'll never forget too about how stupid business people are. You probably know the names, maybe you don't. Steve Ballmer. So Steve Ballmer was with Bill Gates. Really they were the guts of Microsoft, of course. Steve Ballmer now owns the LA Clippers basketball team. He's made a lot of money on that. But Steve Ballmer was the head of Microsoft after Bill Gates and before the current CEO, what's his name, Ayala, whatever his name is. Anyhow, and Ballmer at Microsoft would not allow Apple products on Microsoft's campus. And I remember reading this article in the journal going, what a fucking idiot. Now, I can understand as Microsoft, you don't want to have Apple products on your campus. You think that, but give me a break. I want the competition on my campus. I want to know, and then beat them. He pretended I call that the ostrich strategy. Let's pretend that the competition doesn't exist. And so we just sort of put we wall out the product from coming into our campus. Are you insane? And of course, Apple ate Microsoft's lunch. Ballmer got canned, basically left Microsoft. He bought the Clippers and made a lot of money there, but turned out to be, just kind of a moron tech executive, just in the right place at the right time. So there you go. I don't know. Those are some thoughts.
Okay. This next question is about real estate, because I know you're like a real estate expert. So
supposedly.
I know a lot of people, they have criterias for investing. So when you're looking at real estate, is there certain criteria you look for in a home?
Well, yeah. I mean, so that's where you can visit our firm website. Look, I mean, when you're talking about investing in real estate, you have to sort of think about product type. There's lots of, from hotels to apartments to single family to retail to office buildings to self-storage centers. There's lots of product types. Where do you want to invest? What's your geography? You're going to have a geographical focus. It's a big world out there, and there are a lot of players in regional and local markets who know the markets much better than you. So where do you want to invest? Is it California, elsewhere, internationally, and why? What's the thinking there? And then, of course, market cycles, capital availability, return thresholds. Who are your investors? What returns do they require? Are you talking about getting individual investors, friends and family? institutional sort of partners or joint ventures. I mean, there's a million ways. I'm telling you, that's what we teach a lot in business school and a lot in my classes is thinking through all those things. But there are people that have been very, very successful in all these different niches doing different things. But it's a huge, it's a huge market with lots of niches. So you have to think through that. Sorry, I'm kind of keeping my dog busy here. Anyhow, but that's a really broad question. And like I say, our firm just does now, at least since 2000 or so, just apartments, value add apartments in sort of the west of Texas, part of the United States. Mm-hmm. That's our strategy. But there's people who do a lot of different things in a lot of different markets and different product types.
What about in terms of from a personal finance perspective? So when you're looking for your first home, generally what should you look for?
Well, again, that's a different issue, and again, even whether you want to buy a home, I think again, this is where Evan, your question relies on the foundation that a home makes sense for a lot of folks, and actually, buying a home, this idea of the American dream, which is sort of part of our DNA, is I think a misconception for most folks. Owning a home, and it's becoming out of reach for most folks. Look, you in Camden, you guys will see where life takes you, but homes sort of lock you down to a certain extent, to certain communities, for a certain geography. Whereas when you're in your 20s and maybe even in your 30s, you may want mobility. You want to be able to change jobs. You may change where you live. You don't know who you're going to meet and fall for. I mean, you just don't know these things, I can tell you. And whether that happens at all in this crazy world, it's not easy to meet people. Mm-hmm. So, I would just start with the foundation that maybe buying a house is not even the right move for a lot of folks. You got to put at least $100,000 to $200,000 down in your down payment. It costs a lot of money. You pay a lot in repairs, maintenance, property taxes, insurance, and it locks you in. So you don't have the flexibility of movement and everything else. So that's one thing. As far as buying a home, then you have to think through that. Okay, is this home? What I tell people is you have to sort of at least ask yourself whether the home that you find you could see yourself living in for the next 5 years, given all the information you have, given your job situation, your relationship situation. But I tell a lot of my students, if they're single, why are you buying a house? You don't know where life is going to take you. When you're in a committed relationship, whatever that looks like, well then, you're thinking about family or the future, or whatever. You can at least start thinking, hey, does this community, does this house sort of fit our needs, we think, for the next 5 years? Only if you think 5 years. If you're not sure, rent.
Okay.
Wait. All right. And even look, life can change. You may say, "Gee, I think this is going to be great for the next 10 years," but then life changes. You get a job offer in Nevada or in in Denver, and you move because you have a great opportunity. Okay, and you got to sell the house or rent it. It becomes a pain in the ass, actually. So, whereas renting is much easier. You can move, your lease is up, you can get subleases and move, and you have much less commitment, financial commitment. So that's my thinking there, at least initially.
Okay, that's a new perspective. I've never thought about that, actually. I guess you're right. The American dream is always about buying your own home.
But it's bullshit. People say paying rent is throwing away your money and you're building up equity. Well, it depends what you're doing with your down payment. If your down payment, you're pissing it away going to Vegas or getting aromatherapy massages every week, and you got a fancy car. Well, then maybe you're right. Buying a house is a forced investment. But if, I told you, buying a house now requires minimum 6-figure down payment. What are you doing with that 6 figures? Is invest in the stock market? Did you buy Nvidia? Did you buy crypto? I mean, I'm not saying you should do any of those things, but if you're investing it, you're making money that way. So it's not throwing away your money. But again, Americans generally are bad savers. We're a consumer society. So buying a home was sort of a forced way for Americans to save into something. Mm-hmm. But if you're disciplined, and I assume you too are disciplined folks and prudent financially, that's just a misconception.
Okay. Camden, do you have any questions?
What do you think are rising niches in the real estate market are becoming more potent?
Well, I'm not sure. That's a changing thing. I teach this course every winter in real estate entrepreneurship, more thinking about what trends, what's happening that may affect real estate markets, real estate values, and so forth. So that could include lots of things, right? Things like as technology changes, autonomous driving, remote work, How will that affect commute times and where people are able to live and work? It's one thing if you have to come into the office every day. There's something called the Marchetti constant, which is basically people don't like to drive more than a half hour each way. Basically, an hour commute is what people want in terms of work. Well, that hour can change if autonomous cars can, take you where you want to go, and you can work your own Waymo or Tesla or whatever. And that's going to make people can commute further. If you only have to come in the office 3 days a week as opposed to 5, maybe you're willing to, okay, for the 2 days I got to go in the office, I'm willing to drive an extra 15 minutes each way because I'm not commuting those other days. That can change where people live and work. That's a trend to be sure. Smaller homes, smaller residences, the way people live is changing. People don't cook like they used to at home. There's multiple generations. You look internationally, most people live with multiple generations living under one roof. Certainly in a lot of parts of Asia and Europe, it's very common. Look, because it's so expensive to live, so you can get childcare. Your parents who are maybe retired can help with childcare while you work. So in-law suites are a big thing now. I think 20 to 35-year-olds living back at home now is a big thing. Look, in the United States, once kids graduated college, they didn't come back home. That's changed because, again, and that's a trend that's affecting housing and housing needs. What else is happening across real estate? I mean, office conversions. The office is out of favor right now. It's getting hammered. So people are trying to figure out what to do with this excess office space. Will it be converted or torn down? That's going to be a real interesting issue. Same with retail. A lot of dead retail in malls that are kind of dead in the Midwest. What's going to happen with that real estate? So I think that's going to be a big trend, but it's unclear how that will play out. The aging demographic. The United States is getting older. And so that's going to be a trend for senior living and assisted living. I mean, these are all things you have to look at. Young people are getting married. Go back to the demographics. You all, if history is correct, look, I was married at 23. I don't know when your folks got married, when Dan got married, but look, the average age of people getting married at 30 now and not having children until their 30s. Well, that's going to affect housing, right? It goes to what we talked about earlier. You don't need to buy a house if you're single. So maybe more people are going to be renting for longer. Anyways, those are some thoughts that you can chew on.
So do you think that
Thank you.
more brick and mortars are going to close down because of all this shift towards AI and like digitalism?
Well, that's already been happening, though. So we call that the bricks to clicks. So sort of the change in retail from, physical stores to online. I mean, Walgreens is going to be closing a ton of its stores. Red Lobster's closing up, going bankrupt. Tender Greens, I read, going bankrupt. There are a lot of places shuttering. Yeah, Tender Greens filed Chapter 11 this week. Do you know Tender Greens? So look, the only constant is change, and certainly you're right. Bricks to clicks. A creative office was a huge thing where, an open office space sort of became a thing, and then COVID hit, and that sort of changed that whole thing. So look, there's the real estate needs, of course, change with changing demographics and the changing job landscape, changing technology. AI will have an impact, but it's not clear to me exactly how that will affect real estate so much. It's not going to affect housing, I think, all that much.
Right.
Other than remote work. Again, remote work can change where people live. As COVID, people could work from Hawaii and live whatever. We're doing that stuff during COVID. I don't know how deep that will go. I think people want people to return to the office by and large, and they're trying to pressure employees to come back to the office. But anyways, I digress. Those are some thoughts.
I'm working at an internship right now, and they're using AI to look through data to try to find what's lucrative in real estate. Do you think that could work out, or?
I don't know. I mean, look, AI. Look, AI has become sort of a catchphrase for shit that we've been doing for fucking years, okay? So things like what you're talking about is regression analyses and algorithms and analyzing data analytics. That's been going on for years now. And of course, I mean, look, I go back to my career when I started, we didn't have Excel. I mean, so look, even things like Microsoft Excel has allowed for just to analyze large swaths of data and whatnot. So there's nothing new there at all. I mean, so can AI cull through data and analyze it in a more meaningful way? Yes and no, too. It gives you a lot of hallucinations, a lot of bad things, still very nascent. And I don't know if I'm not aware of anything in AI that's going to help folks identify trends any more than what I just discussed. And sort of, as I said, we have data analytical tools that can take swaths of data with a theory and test it. I do it all the time. So, that's what regressions are about, and statistical analyses. So, look, technology in general is, helping us do all those things, but that's been going on for years. Nothing. So we'll see. I think at the end of the day, humans are going to come up with the ideas, and AI may help, but we'll see. But eventually, yeah, maybe humans, maybe AI will be, doing its own thing. Elon Musk's greatest fear will come to pass. We'll all be murdered and killed by robots created by AI.
Yeah, real estate or realtor AIs, like where they just like take you around. That might be a
Well, of
thing.
course, but right. Well, virtual tours, drones have changed. You want to look at what drones have impacted real estate. That you can now, with a drone, go tour properties and go into houses. You see the drone? Like, amazing how people can control these drones.
Mhm.
So you can do virtual tours without ever setting foot in a piece of property. I mean, that's all true. That's all new in the last 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense because, like, what happens if you want to move to the East Coast? I don't think it would be that feasible to drive all the way there just to see a home.
Well, you can, and people do, and I would insist before you buy the home or go non-refundable, say you commit, you do that. But right, in the meantime, you can make offers, tour, meet. Look, between Zoom and drones and virtual tours and a lot, you can accomplish a lot from your patio. And then, that's so, productivity is certainly changing as well with technology and all these tools.
Hmm.
But, like I said, how it all plays out remains to be seen. It's sometimes hard to predict how things will, shape up and when. Like I said, I mentioned autonomous driving. I don't know if you follow that. We're still a ways away, despite Elon Musk's bullshit rhetoric. He's got level 2 or 3 autonomy. Level 5 is complete. Waymo and Google are getting there. But still, it's only in limited places, in San Francisco and, the areas where they really are able to do that. It's not having an impact. It's going to be at least another decade before that becomes impactful. But assuming that, or maybe we'll have flying cars. I don't know. And it'll be the Jetsons if you two have ever, watched that cartoon.
Yeah, or like Back to the Future.
Yeah.
Yeah, or Back to the Future, right? Flying cars. Is that going to be the future where Elon Musk and the Boring Company is so stupid, like tunnels were something new? No
Oh
shit.
yeah, yeah.
I mean,
Under
you're
the
doing
city.
tunnels for again. I don't know. He cuts tunnels like it's tunnels. I mean, they've been building tunnels since the 16th century.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, but we have problems with methane and infrastructure. It's not so easy. It's very expensive to bore. Ask anyone in Seattle or Boston. Big dig. Will airspace, be there for us? But again, we're talking 25 years probably, guys. I may be 6 feet under. Maybe before you leave this earth, that'll be a real possibility. But things take longer, regulations take longer, incidents and accidents and software glitches happen, and people will die in the process, no question. And that will be setbacks. People will freak out because the technology isn't 100%, even though it may be safer than humans. These are real issues that why adoption takes longer than people think.
Right.
You can look at what happened in Phoenix with Waymo or whatever it was, or Uber. It was that person died and it set them back to, I think it was Uber. Uber had a driverless car and someone died in
Yeah,
Phoenix.
it was a pedestrian, right?
Correct. But they canceled the whole program. They didn't sit there and no one sat there and said, well, that's terribly tragic, which it certainly was and is. But gee, in regular cars, people hit pedestrians all the time. The right
Right.
calculus isn't whether someone's going to sadly be hurt or die in accidents, because I don't care, software will fail. Is it safer? But humans are funny. If we let the software take over, people are going to be much more tolerant of humans' failures than technology failures. You can mark my word.
And I guess like I guess the media kind of presses on them a lot, saying how this new technology is really dangerous, and that could kind of force them to try to quit instead of finding
Right.
a way to fix it.
Look, guys, I mean, you can study Boeing's issues, the MAX 800
Yeah,
software problem they had. If you study aerospace, they had other problems and quality issues, but right, the MAX 800, airplanes basically are amazingly safe. We've had, knock on wood, we had a commercial airline accident in the United States in 15 years. It's extraordinary because we have software, systems on systems on systems and backup. The MAX 800, the software failed. And in the United States, the pilots were able to deal with training. In Indonesia and other markets, they didn't, and the planes crashed again. And that Boeing, that was a setback, obviously, even though the software is probably safer than pilots. But, we're going to be less tolerant of when that happens. The technology failed us. And anyways, that's things you need to think of it in terms of adoption. It just takes longer than people think.
yeah. I think the planes have some. Excuse me. I think the planes have some new features on them that the pilots weren't aware of, right?
Right. They basically, correct. The planes are basically will fly themselves. It senses everything that,
Hmm.
in theory, pitch, angle, altimeter, everything, and it just corrects itself. But if the software fails and gives the wrong inputs, the pilots have to be able to override the system, turn off autopilot, and fly the fucking plane. But like anything else nowadays, people aren't trained.
Yeah,
It's
they didn't
relying
know.
so heavily on technology. You, you know, Again, you want to. I study all these things. Study, Captain Sullenberger and the landing in the Hudson. Right, his engines failed, and you listen to him, and he was very calm. I'm just going to land this thing in the water. A
Mhm.
lot of pilots would have crashed the plane and killed everybody. I think most would have. He was calm, took control, and just glided the plane into the water. I mean, quite remarkable. I mean, amazing flying, but he didn't panic. Again, the technology failed. No one's fault. It was a bird strike. Anyhow, I mean, I think about all these things. They're, as you can tell, and they're all interesting and have some relevance to as you contemplate the future. That's
Well,
why
speaking
I
of
get paid the
Boeing,
big bucks.
sorry, what was that?
That's why I get paid the big bucks to think about this shit. Anyways,
Oh, speaking of Boeing, do you think that because I know their stock has been struggling a lot recently because of the issues with their planes. So do you think
your
that
dad should
once
buy the stock as a value investment.
sorry, what was that?
Do I think your dad should buy the stock as a value investment? Go
Oh
ahead.
no,
No,
actually, no, he stays away from that. But I purchased a few Boeing shares a few years back because I thought that once we reopened after COVID, then like the traveling industry would go up, which means you're gonna need more planes. But Boeing just had a lot of issues, so it didn't really work out. But do you think that once they figure out these issues, that Boeing stock will be stronger?
possibly. Look, I think like anything, memories are short. Boeing has some internal problems it needs to address. But look, you're essentially talking about an oligopoly. Airbus and Boeing control 90 out of what percent. There are a few other players, Embraer in Brazil. China's trying to come up with its plane industry. But look, Boeing is way ahead, as is Airbus, and so
Hmm.
air travel future. I assume planes will need to be replaced, and I think you're right. But it's going to be for them to recover is going to be a little while. They've done a lot of damage to their reputation, and it's going to take some time. But yes, I think in time. Look, history tells us that Volkswagen Dieselgate. I give you lots of examples. British Petroleum. These are probably examples you don't aware of. Your dad probably does. Yeah, look, humans forget stuff, and the Boeing issues will be forgotten in time as long as they fix them. But they have some work to do.
Okay. And we were looking into me and Ken were looking into airports as a potential investment. Do you think that would be something feasible?
Investing in airports?
Yeah.
I have no idea. Look, their airports themselves are usually owned by you know the public sector, government. You can do what's called you have I think it's called an FBO, free base operator, where you can operate like you think about fueling All airports have operations there, repairs and maintenance, fueling, and some of that is outsourced. Sometimes it's by the airlines themselves. And I presume there are maybe business opportunities there, but you're over my pay scale. I really don't know. I really don't know if there's a market for private airports in some places. I have no idea. That'd be an area someone would have to research for me because I don't know.
Okay. And you know how in California, you're not allowed to sell gasoline cars anymore. It has to be electric.
Well, that's until they're talking 20,
Yeah,
2035 or
right.
something like that. I look, guys, under what are they called, cafe standards. Look, they're trying to, of course, transition us. Whether that's achievable or not remains to be seen. And right now, if you look at the numbers, EV sales are flattening to down, actually.
Hmm.
Tesla sales are down, and they're not even the market leader anymore. But Kia's, Toyota, I think Ford said they're kind of cutting back, GM on their electric cars. That hybrid seems to be much more popular and probably more
Right.
practical for most people. Um, and I'm not convinced that those standards will ultimately be anything other than a pipe dream. Um, and for good reason. Like, I'm not convinced that EVs are, given the battery, needs, lithium needs, the natural metal needs. The cars are much heavier because of the batteries. Um, whether from the life cycle of the car, whether it's that much environmentally better, I'm not sure there's been any really good studies, that that are just positive, that demonstrate that electric cars are better overall for the environment than a good hybrid or a very fuel efficient, Nissan or something like that.
Right.
So, anyway,
Do you think that? But do you think that as we shift, or in California at least, as we shift towards this EV and hybrid kind of society, that it's going to negatively impact companies like AutoZone or O'Reilly, who sell primarily gasoline parts?
probably. I assume that's certainly true. I mean, look, I have an EV. I have a Key EV, and it's true. You don't need oil or oil filters, or you still need brake pads and radiator fluid, I think, engine coolant. So a lot of the stuff is the same. But you're right. In some areas, certainly the most obvious one are petroleum products. So that's not just, of course, gas in the car, but oil, motor oil. And that's why the petroleum industry is, of course, lobbying so hard. So sure, how that affects the O'Reillys or the Pep Boys, I assume there are different moving parts there, literally and figuratively. Not only, of course, the transition EVs, but how long people own their cars. Obviously, to the extent people are owning their cars longer, that'll benefit Pep Boys and car repair places. Cars are
Right.
expensive now. The median car price is probably 45,000. I mean, my first car was $6,000 when I bought my first car. So I mean, cars are really expensive. Are people going to keep them longer as a result? Are people going to be doing it again? I mean, all these trends we talked about earlier, whether it's Uber and Lyft, people have probably heard car sales and auto park companies. I mean, I'm sure of that, right? You don't need to own it. For a lot of people, owning a car makes no sense now. Just Uber or Lyft. You don't have to pay insurance, gas. So that has that an effect? Sure. Shared economy, all relevant. These are all trends.
Right. And I guess as a way to adapt to the situation, AutoZone at least has been expanding more towards south, like to Latin America, where they can't necessarily afford these electric cars.
Right. Or there's still driving stick shifts. Sure.
Hmm.
I mean, look, the only constant is change. Business changes, population, demographics, demand, technology. So these are all things you have to be ahead of the curve. Like I said, demographics matter. You don't put car places in Beverly Hills. There's no, you won't find an AutoZone in Beverly Hills.
Hmm.
You go to UCLA, you'll find Pep Boys all over the place. So, there's goes to your point, right? Demographics and your customer base matter, and even online now. I mean, come on. I mean, I imagine you can order a lot of auto parts. I've bought auto parts online. I needed a mirror. I just bought it online. So you don't even have to go to a physical store anymore.
Right. Kim, do you have any questions? The Zoom the free session ends in 4 minutes. So
I guess as like a concluding or transitioning question towards business, what's the one like life lesson that you learned that's like granted you the most success in business and life?
I'm not sure there's one thing. I would just say this. One of my favorite quotes, and I'm not even sure who it comes from, said that, I believe in good luck. But I notice that the harder that I work, the more of it I seem to get. There is what I've tried as a parent, and I'm sure the two of you, with your upbringing, look, there is no substitute for hard work. I have no tolerance for laziness. Look, no one's handed nothing to nobody, and your generation, and maybe the Gen Zers, unfortunately have a reputation for being a little lazy. That you've been raised in an environment where you haven't wanted. My father was a Depression era child. He grew up with nothing, dirt poor, and raised us that way. That we had nothing and we had to work our asses off and make it. My kids were raised in a much more cozy, comfortable environment, a big house, everything else, and I had to really work hard to make sure they understood that I was not going to tolerate laziness. You have to work hard. No one's handing anything to anybody. There are a lot of smart people who want to be successful, and I told you, that's why you may have a great idea. There are tons of people. And those that are able to, really work hard, and there is no substitute, are going to be more successful. I don't care if it's in academia, in school, in business, in life, in marriage, in parenting, in everything. And that's what I would say. Our phones are making us intellectually lazy.
yeah, definitely.
And
Yeah, TikTok.
Lower
it's making
attention.
right, everything has got to be in 2 minutes. Give me the whole thing in 30 seconds. I mean, I want to know everything. I want to be a partner. I hired some kids in their 20s. They want to be a partner before they're 30. I'm like, okay, I built this company from nothing. It took me 30 years. Patience, slow down, work hard, show me you're good, and then I'll reward you. There was a sort of entitlement thing. It really is an issue, I think, and I worry about is, I get work-life balance, and don't get me wrong, it's very important, but, it's called work, and you have to work hard to be successful. Luck is a wonderful thing, as I said, but I believe that the harder you work, the more of it you'll get.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for answering our questions and all this information. It's really insightful.
I'm sure we'll talk some more. I'm a teacher, so the problem isn't getting me to talk, it's getting me to shut up. That's the problem.
We really appreciate you taking out the time.
You guys.
Thank you so much.
Give your dad a kiss for me. All right. Bye, guys.
All right, bye.
Have a nice day.
You too.